Promise it won't hurt a bit. As we get started today, we remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Solomon, how he was the king of the people of Israel, and how as a king that really didn't follow God, things fell apart, and then literally fell apart as the kingdom divided between northern and southern. Last week, you may recall, we were talking about Elijah and Elisha and how the prophets were dealing with the Assyrian king's commander of the army and his leprosy. Well, as we come back into the text today, we're about 100 years later. Hezekiah is our current king for the northern tribe, and they are in a siege situation. He's fortified the cities, knowing that things were going to get rough, and then he sort of thumbs his nose at the Assyrians, and things do indeed get rough. There are 43 cities that had been fortified that were then conquered. But Micah today is talking from the southern kingdom's perspective. A lot of times scholarship and commentators will talk about him as the country boy speaking power to the city king. Now, for as much as we want to rejoice that we have trees and things around us, I can tell you as somebody who has been in the country, we're part of the city folk, whether you like it or not, even as Cheryl sits back there with horses on her property. But what he's talking to him about is he's saying, hey, king, you don't get it. We're supposed to be a covenant people. This is a covenant relationship. We're God's people. God's going to watch out for us. God's going to take care of us if we obey God's commands. We're not obeying. God's not protecting. And in fact, it is justice from God that has the Assyrians as our overlords. Retributive justice. He's trying to correct our behavior. It's a punishment that doesn't go as far as revenge, but it's a way of saying, you need to get right with me so we can get on with the program. In our verses for today, what we hear is the covenant court case. It's the lawsuit, if you will. It's God saying, the mountains are my witness. The earth is my witness. People, what have I done to you? What am I guilty of? And then Micah gives us exactly what God has done. Through the forgiveness, through the conquering of enemy kings, through the leadership of Moses. These are all of the things God has done. And then he says, and people, what about you? Answer for yourselves. Now, I don't know about you, but I have children in my home. There are times when they will ask a question that they already know the answer to. Why can't we take the dogs with us to Aunt Marcy's for Thanksgiving? What have I told you? But why can't we? What have I said? Have you ever had anything like that happen in your house? I know the answer you gave me, but I didn't like the answer, so I'm going to ask the question again. That's where the people of Israel are right now. What do we need to do, God? What do we need to do? Okay, we made a mess. How do we get out of it? Can we buy our way out? The sacrificial system wasn't really a buyout for them. We'll talk about that a little bit more and how, as a church, we did get to a buyout stage. But the sacrificial system is what they knew. It's what they'd been taught. And they thought, okay, if we're just religious enough, then this will be okay. So what does it take, Lord? What do we need to do to get right? Will a year-old calf do? Shall we offer a burnt offering, a calf? That's kind of what we normally do. We get in trouble, we come back, we offer you a burnt offering, and then things are okay. If that's not going to be enough, how about some rams? You want 1,000 rams? We'll bring those to the offering. We'll put 1,000 rams up there. It's doable. It's a stretch. We know we've kind of messed up, so we'll pay big this time. Then we get into the hyperbole of it. How about 10,000 rivers of oil? You know, when you were doing burnt offering sacrifices, it took about a half a pint of oil. So 10,000 rivers of oil is obviously excessive. And then we get into, well, if that's not enough, then, James says to God, how about Laura Lee? I'll give you my firstborn. Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. Is that what you want, Lord? You want my firstborn? And Micah is fed up. You already know the answer, Micah says. You hear it. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? We always jump to the end of that verse. It's funny when you think of the book of Micah, most people only think verse 6, 8. And they think to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God, or whatever version you've most seen it in, cross-stitch or memorized it on. I realize that's not exactly how the NIV lays it out for us. You already know what God wants of you. What an important reminder for us today as we think about all of the ways that we try and please or appease God. Well, God, are you going to be happy if I just show up for church on Sunday? How about if I show up 2 Sundays in a row? Will that make you happy? God, let's make a deal. I'll be there all month long. I'll even come on Wednesday nights. Well, Lord, if that's not enough, let's get really crazy with it. I'll come on Sundays, I'll come on Wednesdays, and I'll say yes to your call to serve on session. You want my firstborn? Okay, Lord, I'll serve on B&P. The Lord doesn't want our religiousness. It's not about our behavior. It's about our heart. We have, historically as Christians, we've tried to buy our way out of trouble in a lot of ways. How many of you have ever heard the word indulgences? Just quick raise your hand. There you go. How many of you have ever heard of the sale of indulgences? Yeah, wasn't that neat? There was a time in our church history where you could walk up to the priest and go, yeah, I'm going to get in trouble later on and I don't want to go to hell for it, so here I'm going to pay for my get out of hell card. It was forgiveness insurance. Admittedly, it's been a while. You guys aren't paying me much for that anymore. Why? Because, well, it's free. It's God's gift to us through Jesus Christ. But that came about, and I'm just going to do a quick aside here because the sale of indulgences fascinated me when I got into this topic. Indulgences came about in the Catholic Church during the Crusades. Now, to understand why, within the Catholic Church, if you had committed any sin, and then you were in mortal danger, and you were going to die before you could confess to the priest, then you were condemned to hell. So the Catholic priests said, you are on a crusade, therefore you are doing good works for God. Good works are salvific, so you're okay. That's where the indulgences came from. And then there were some folks sitting back at home going, well, I can't actually go to the crusades because I can't handle the fighting, but I can fund the crusades. I can support that. So if I'm supporting good works, does that also mean that I get the indulgence? And of course, the answer was, well, yes, because supporting good works is doing good works. That's where Presbyterian mission committees for centuries have just written checks instead of actually getting involved. But that was the indulgence. And, well, it's not too far of a leap to see how somebody would say, well, we're already taking money for this indulgence package in support of the Crusades. But what if we were to take that not in support of the Crusades, but in support of paving the parking lot? Yeah, you can go ahead and pay me for that too. Here's your indulgence. Here's your salvation insurance card. And it got to the point where you could buy your way out of hell. You could, in fact, even buy indulgences for those who had already died, so they'd buy their way out of purgatory. I shouldn't have said hell. I should have said purgatory. Let's keep my Catholic religion straight here. And, of course, Martin Luther was the one who came along and said, that's not right. Maybe he was reading Micah. That's not right. You know, part of the extra little scholarly bump here, and I'll offer this one for John Cavato because I know he always likes to learn something new. When we talk about the Micah saying, offer your firstborn, is that what we're supposed to do? And we think that's hyperbole. In fact, it's not. It's what the king of Israel had already done. Ahaz, let me find the date for you. I do indeed have notes for this, believe it or not. Ahaz, who was the king prior to Hezekiah in Jerusalem, sacrificed his son in the fire. We find this in 2 Kings 16:3. But the king was doing it to follow the practices of the Assyrians. They sacrificed their children to Moloch, their god. So, okay, I'll go so far as to give you my firstborn. Is that what it's going to take? Mortal, you already know the answer. What does the Lord require of you? Okay, we've got it out there. Now let's put it together. It's three things: justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your Lord. What does the Lord require of you? You're eventually going to get that together, but not right now because we're not going to take forever on this. When you say the words, do justice, one of the things that is amazing to me is how in American society today, we immediately have to back up and define it. I spoke earlier about the Thanksgiving trip to Aunt Marcy's house. If you talk to Olivia, her youngest daughter, and say, let's do justice, she thinks you're going shopping. The tween department fashion store, let's do justice. It's on sale. If you talk to a police officer and say, let's do justice, or you talk to a social worker and say, let's do justice, or you talk to an accountant and say, let's do justice, you're going to get different answers. In fact, if you talk to Google, I read it on the internet, so it must be true, you get criminal justice, distributive justice, global justice, economic justice, retributive justice, or social justice. He has told you, O mortal, what is good: to do justice. Biblical justice is the real, right, and specifically governing concept, along with mercy, that is present in God. You want to know how to do justice? For Micah's day, it was follow the 10 Commandments, the law of Moses given by God for God's people. For us today, it's following Jesus' summary of those 10 Commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Hesed, a wonderful Hebrew word that means loving kindness. That's the word Micah uses here. The loving kindness, the mercy that comes along with our justice. So it's to have that heart of openness, of acceptance, of restoration that God offers to us and God wants us to offer with one another. And then ultimately to walk humbly with our God. That's probably the easiest one to understand because it simply means this: put God's will over our will. Now, as I explained to the children, the idea of do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with our God can seem awfully daunting because it's a world-changing endeavor, is it not? It is. But I'm stealing a little trick that we experienced at the presbytery meeting yesterday. So if you have received a yellow ribbon, would you be so kind to stand, if you are able, where you are now. And what I want to invite you to do, this ribbon, unlike what we were given yesterday, we were told it was 3 feet. It was 100 centimeters. We pointed that out to them, of course. Paul Ferre did that for us. But they gave us a little measuring tape from IKEA. I didn't have a chance to get to IKEA and get a bunch of them, so I used yellow ribbon. But what I wanted to invite you to do is take this ribbon, which is 3 feet long, hold one end at your navel, belly button, center of your chest or belly, whatever you're comfortable. Hold one end here, and take the other end and hold it out as far as you can. In front of you, not up, out. I realize most of us don't have 3 foot long arms. Now here's what I need you to do. With that held out, I need you to just exactly where you're standing, turn in a circle and see who you bump into. That's the impact radius that I want to challenge each of you with this week. Find someone within 3 feet of you to do justice, to love kindness, or to walk humbly with your God. Could be as simple as an international gift. That's well beyond our 3 foot range, even if we hang it. You're at the grocery store, you're checking out. How can you offer kindness to that cashier or to the bagger? You've got a doctor's appointment. You guys can sit down now. I'm sorry, thank you. You've got a doctor's appointment. How many of you have ever walked into the doctor's office and said, "Doc, how are you today?" In your daily interactions at the office, I guarantee you, if you are walking into business America anywhere, somebody in your place of work is stressed. Offer them a word of peace. Offer them the comfort of God. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. That's why it takes a prophet to tell us. But you already know what God wants of you.